Board is now in order. I'm going to, if I can find the roll sheet,
Oh,
call the roll. Still missing the roll sheet.
No, you have it. More sugar. Somebody has it.
Okay. Commissioner Hamilton, are you here?
Yes.
Commissioner Colleen, are you here?
Here.
Alderman Kennedy, are you here?
Here.
Commissioner Vines, are you here?
yes.
And I am here. If anybody else comes in, we will add them to the record.
Yeah.
Commissioners, have you had a chance to look at the minutes of the last meeting?
Have they been dispersed?
No, they have not.
Okay, then. Anybody who answered yes lied. Randy?
I didn't answer yes, I
Randy?
just nodded. I was nodding.
Okay. Commissioners, have you looked at the agenda, which has some changes from what was posted originally? Anybody have any problems? Anybody need to recuse themselves from any issue? Okay, and hearing no objection, this will be our agenda, and we'll begin by calling agenda item A, 1200 North First Street, which is an interesting project.
And I can't make this go forward. Oh, here we go, okay. This is a
Yeah.
landmark petition for Al's Restaurant that hopefully you're all familiar with at 1200 North First Street. It is the oldest family-owned, continuously operated restaurant in the city. And this is its location, it's north of downtown, north of Cleves Landing, actually. This is part of the petition, which hopefully you all have had. You have copies of it in front of you. This indicates the surrounding zoning, which is pretty much K industrial, for the little red spot, which is Al's Restaurant. And then directly to the right is, of course, another city landmark, the Ashley Street Power Station. How can this go? Another view of the restaurant. And this is the restaurant in the 1875, well, I don't think it was a restaurant at that point, but this is the building with its second story, which came off sometime in the 60s with the collapse of an adjacent building. And that is Al's Restaurant at the corner. I never do well with these, but that's the building. And this is the 1883 Hopkins, and again, the building. The 1909 Sanborn map, which shows the current addition at the rear. So at some point, that addition was in, we don't really know exactly what date, but probably around 1900. That was added to the back. This is the building just prior to it becoming Al's Restaurant, I guess, and it was originally a sugar warehouse. And this is Al's in the 1920s on the left, and probably around the 1940s on the right. So the building's undergone a lot of change. What hasn't changed is the fact that it's been the family-owned restaurant for so long. And that was the determination that the office made, that it was important enough to be considered a cultural landmark. It's a little bit different from a lot of the landmarks that we have, where there's a lot of regulation as to what can happen to the outside of the building. The landmark petition proposes that it remain a landmark and it keeps its status as long as the family owns the building. Okay, so this is just the context. You can see how much that has also changed since it was originally established. It is really kind of in a vast, empty area, and its closest neighbor is the casino. The Cultural Resources has submitted the petition to the Planning Commission, which approved it, and to the Board of Public Service, which did not comment. That's not unusual. When they really had no objections, we don't hear from them. So this public meeting will be the last before it's submitted to the Board of Aldermen to become a landmark. Any questions?
So I should, counsel, is this correct? Ask for a motion to convene as a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anyone opposed? Okay, this is now a public hearing on the question of landmark designation for Al's Restaurant. Is there anybody here to speak on that subject?
Gary.
I'm nervous. Doing fine. I feel the same way when I'm waiting for the check.
My name is Gary Neal, and I'm the husband of the third generation granddaughter of Al's Restaurant. And it's an honor to be here this afternoon to have our application for landmark status on your agenda for approval. My family and I are extremely humbled and excited and hope that our 93 years of historical and cultural contributions to St. Louis, specifically the near North Riverfront area of downtown, will be as exciting and intriguing to you as well. And I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration, and we thank Dan and Jan for their hard work. And we look forward to continuing the legacy of Al's and seeing it continue through our grandchildren, generations to come, which actually is the fourth generation. I'll share with you the letter from our alderwoman to Dan. Dear Dan, please accept this letter of support of Al's Restaurant landmark petition. Al's Restaurant has resided in the 5th Ward for 93 years and is the cornerstone business to the entrance of the near North Riverfront. It has been continuously owned and operated in the same location since 1925. Adding a landmark designation to the ward would be a significant accomplishment to an area that has such potential for great things. Thank you for your consideration and time. Should you have any concerns, please feel free to contact me.
Is there anybody else here to speak at this public meeting? Do I hear a motion to close the public meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made. Is there any objection? Okay, the public meeting is closed. Commissioners, do I hear a motion that a landmark designation bill with a landmark preservation plan be prepared for consideration by the Board of Aldermen?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Who has not been to Al's?
Didn't Sinatra eat there? So
Got the
that's all they needed to
picture.
say, right?
There was actually a
I've been by it.
Yes?
I
No?
haven't been. I know.
this is the Frank Sinatra photo. Al and Frank were personal friends.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you the story if I have a moment. One night, Frank came into Al's, and he came in by himself. And Al says, "Hey, Frank, what can I get you?" He says, "Well, I'd like 2 steaks." He says, "2 steaks, Frank? You're here by yourself. What in the world would you like 2 steaks for?" He says, "Well, my driver's out in the car watching my dog, and the steak's for my dog." Dog in here. So Frank and the dog ate their steaks at table 8. And then at the end of the night, Frank wrote a personal note to Al, for Al, all good wishes, Frank Sinatra, 1982.
Is there a picture of the bar in there?
Yes.
Or the bar alone
You
should be
go
the
there.
landmark?
Yeah, here's
Go.
here's some pictures if you'd like for me to approach.
Please.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
This is our riverboat bar. Just part of it here.
It
put the
is
lights-
trippy.
Yeah,
It's so
have the Disney effect.
Oh.
And it's another, and I'll get down there also.
No problem.
That's, the other part of the bar. So this is when you walk in.
I need to go.
And then this is, according to the American Pickers, when they came in last year, they said this chair was over 200 years old.
Wow.
And this is just a black and white of the bar, so that was taken a while back.
Oh, wow.
And other than that, we're on St. Louis's Monopoly.
Oh, I have that game.
So there's Al's on there. We're, I think, next to Boardwalk, where Boardwalk would be, but here's Al's right here.
Oh, I need to pull it out and see, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Tell them about the Emmy.
Oh, okay. Tell you about the Emmy Award. Well, oh, there's the picture. It was in this book. From what we've been told, well, let me start with the story. What happened was there was a reporter named Paul Shankman.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And Paul retired about a year ago, last January. And after he retired, PBS contacted him and asked him if he'd like to do a documentary on Al's restaurant for their program Living St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, sure. So they came down, they did filming, and they edited it down to about 8 minutes.
Oh.
And that 8 minutes was nominated for an Emmy Award,
Oh,
and we
wow.
won.
Oh, wow.
And here it is, and our name is actually
Oh,
on
that's-
the Emmy.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And so we've been told we're the only restaurant in the nation to ever win
An
an
Emmy
Emmy Award under the historic/cultural category.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Wow.
That's-
Pretty cool.
Very
That's
cool.
fascinating.
Well, God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thanks for the stories.
Need to
Go to
share
Flora.
Al's.
Flora, oh, that's why I'm so.
Appreciate you doing that.
Alice has shared a lot with me over the years.
Anything else?
Any further discussion, commissioners? There's a motion on the floor. It's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
God bless you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks.
Okay, commissioners, now we have a preliminary review. I'll call agenda item B, 3900 Flora Place.
Oh, Richard.
Review for 3900 Floor Place, and Andrea Gagan with Alterations.
Whether or not second now, because the agenda did get changed at the last.
Is 3900 Floor Place, minus the porta potty that's in front of it right now, but previous to this, it was completely covered with vegetation, so this is a more recent view. If you look on Google, it's just kind of a mass of, you can't really see the house at all. This is the corner, it's on at the corner of 39th and Floor Place. Basically, the owners have applied for several things, but they applied for a preliminary review for a few things that we thought might be an issue. First is the proposal to rebuild the front porch. If they rebuild it in the existing configuration, we don't have any issue with it. They were wanting to possibly use the limestone from the retaining wall on the side to add to the sides of the existing porch design, and we don't feel that that's really appropriate for the building. So, you know, if they're agreeable to just rebuilding it as is, we're good with that. The biggest issues are the proposal to remove this chimney and to infill this area here, remove these two retaining walls, and infill this with dirt. And they'd have to berm it up, obviously, to cover that. And this is kind of this is the resisting right now. This is their proposal of what it would look like. As you can see, I mean, the chimney is fairly decorative chimney, and it's a element on the 39th Street elevation of the house. It also is a little strange with it removed because it's still, part of it will still remain there. But it definitely changes the look of that side of the building. Here's a look close up of the retaining walls and the garage door, which we believe to be original to the house, both the retaining walls and the garage door. It was something that wasn't too uncommon in the late 20s for those to be. There's a few of them down in South St. Louis. Also seen. So basically, both the removal of the chimney and the infilling of the garage door area and the removal of the retaining walls do not meet the historic district standards. There are all significant changes to the architectural character of the building and therefore not in compliance. As I said before, if they're agreeable to rebuild the porch as is, then we're okay with that. Personally, I think the chimney is the most important element to retain as an important feature of the building, and as you see, it is a significant difference in the appearance of the building without it. The Cultural Resources Office recommends that the Preservation Board withhold the preliminary approval at this time for the proposed exterior alterations as they do not meet the Shaw Historic District standards. I do have a letter from one of the neighbors stating that they are in favor of them infilling the drive and garage doors. There have been water issues previously.
Questions on this side? Questions on this side? Thank you. Okay, let's hear from the applicant, please.
My name is Matt Laux. I'm co-owner of the property at question. The reason that we would like to, first of all, remove the brick chimney is normally we would be totally against this, but there are numerous areas on the house where the brick facade has cracked off and it's completely gone. We even have a section of wall that has about a 3-foot by 4-foot hole in it that we would like to patch. We would like to use the original brick to do this because it is a very distinctive pattern. It's a 3-hole brick, so finding any kind of used brick in a 3-hole brick is almost impossible. I've spoke with numerous masonry companies. We'd be looking at having to potentially form new bricks, which is a long and expensive process. The existing chimney also, at some point, was tuck pointed improperly with modern Portland cement, which cracked a lot of the facade of the brick pattern that is stamped on the brick. It's kind of a herringbone type pattern. I've never seen it in St. Louis in 15, 20 years of construction in the area. So we were wanting to keep all of the historic value of the house as possible and pull it from the original materials. It's not a cost-effective thing for us either way. Either way is really expensive, so the financial aspect of it isn't even our regards. It's trying to bring the property back up to its former glory. As for the tuck under garage, there are many reasons for us wanting to infill this area. Number one, as stated in one of the neighbors' letters to you guys, is that The tuck under garage has flooded numerous times. Even with proper drainage installed in that area, it has about a 20 to 25% slope. This just rushes all the water towards the foundation of the house. And during a heavy St. Louis storm, even with proper drainage, a few leaves can cover a drain and flood the basement, which is the foundation of the house. It's only about a 26-foot run from the sidewalk to the garage, which has an 8-foot door. So basically, you're dropping almost 8 feet over the course of 26 feet. Doesn't make it useful as a garage. We do have plans to build a 2-car garage on the back of the house, exiting out the back alley, which is kind of more in keeping with the Shaw neighborhood. Most of the homes in Shaw, as you know, especially on Flora, were built 1900 to 1915. This house was built in 31, so it's significantly after that time period. But there are numerous reasons to infill this. Another is that the retaining walls, with the 30-plus years of overgrowth of the vegetation, there are trees off to the side that have collapsed the retaining wall in slightly. It's leaning in about a foot on either side. But we've had to pump out water out of this area every time it rains, even a little bit, because in the protruding part of the house, the small room off to the side there, you can see on that elevation, below that, in the basement, is about a floor that's 18 inches deeper than the rest of the floor in the basement. And again, while we could patch this with modern drainage, and that's not an issue, sump pumps and whatnot, I just worry about the overall integrity of the home. So if you have any suggestions on anything else we should do, we would more than oblige, but we even have new buyers for the property. They already have this property under contract. They're more than happy to have this portion of the garage filled in. So I don't know. We had a few other things. The front porch, we are happy to rebuild it to the original standard. Just include pouring a new pad on the top of it for concrete and resetting a few bricks and re-tuck pointing the entire thing. We only suggested reusing some of the retaining wall limestone to kind of keep it with the house, since it was original to the house. I don't know. That's about all I have.
Questions on this side? Questions on this side?
I do, actually. If I understand it, you were going to hopefully use the brick from the chimney to fill that hole that you mentioned, right?
Yeah, there's a hole on the opposite side of the house. I know it's not a street side facing part of the house, but it is literally probably 4.5 feet tall by 3 feet wide, where the exterior brick and even the common brick on the inside of the house has completely collapsed out. We want to rebuild this area, and there are numerous areas throughout the entire house, including right at the front door, where the facade of the brick has sheeted off because of a lack of tuck pointing. This property was neglected for 30-plus years.
Sure. So I guess my question would be, if you had to keep the chimney, what would the alternative material that you would use to fill
I guess, I mean, the only thing we could really do is keep with the color pattern, replace the brick.
With a smooth face,
Yeah, I mean,
which wouldn't look appropriate to the house. It would be an eyesore as soon as you walk to the side of the house, which is a nice pathway. Well, it will be a nice pathway. Our main wishes are.
this is Steve Hayes. He's the other owner of the property.
We really just want to keep the house. I mean, it will be very, very nice, and by doing these things that we are proposing, will be to the best interest of not just the neighborhood. I mean, yes, you are losing the top chimney, but it's for the benefit of the house, you know, for the actual whole integrity of the house. So I mean, we're taking just a small part of the top, you know, putting a new roof on it so it looks, you know, spectacular, but then also using that brick to replace areas of the house that are missing. It's just completely gone. I mean, you know, the vines and stuff literally just ripped the face of the brick off the brick itself, and then in that area, the brick was completely gone, like knocked off the whole house. So, you know, we have to recoup that somewhere. We'd rather not use a smooth face brick just for, you know, architecturally, you know, the look of the house. So,
Thanks.
It's a clever idea. Is there another place in the house, though, where you could scavenge bricks?
the only thing we could possibly do, and we're not even sure how to do it yet, would be, you know, we are building a deck on the back where the other one is, you know, destroyed. We could try to get some bricks up from underneath that, but there's no telling if you're going to lose more brick than you're going to gain by trying to, you know, remove those good bricks to recoup for the other area. So,
Right. Well, you have the same problem with the chimney, I imagine, though.
Well, the chimney is easier to take off because we can start at the top and work our way down, whereas on the deck side, we have
You're
a
underneath.
full floating wall above it that needs to be supported while trying to
And it's
remove
just-
a three-hole brick.
It's just a flue too. There is no operating fireplace in the house, nor was there. It was just a simple flue for the you know, existing boiler that was in
Well,
the basement.
this vote would be a lot easier if you didn't have the portion of the chimney still showing beneath the roof line. That's the problem. Is when
Right.
you're finished, you still have that chimney there, and it's clearly it got clipped off, and we know that street's pretty grand. And
It's a very nice street, and you know, this house has been nothing but an eyesore to the public for the longest time. And
yeah,
but I mean, you're right. It is a, you know, a bumped out area, but it can be looked at two different ways. I think most people are just going to be overall happy with the, you know, end result of the property, as you know, as we're going far beyond on everything else to the nine. We're keeping all the stained glass windows. Refinishing all of them rather than putting new in. I mean, we're doing everything to actually keep the integrity of the historic value of the house, and that is in our best interest. And I mean, it's like having a smoke detector on your ceiling. You're going to look right past it, you know, unless you know it's there. You know, people are going to drive past and they're just going to see how beautiful the house is. They're not going to notice that the top part of that, you know, bump out is not there anymore, because the house does have good character. It's not just a square box. It does have ins and outs and stuff, and it could just be looked at that way. And I hope you see it that way also. I mean, it really is in the best interest of the integrity of the house as a whole.
How much discussion have you had with staff?
Very little.
So, I am not sure that all the issues that could be resolved between you and staff are unsolvable. So maybe some more discussion might be in order. Commissioner Killeen, have you got a motion?
well, with that in mind, I would move to defer until they have more time to talk with staff, or just
Deny.
we just deny, right?
It's a preliminary review.
Right. So, well, I think,
I mean, we solved the porch by accident, just like that.
right, right. No, I think I'll go forward with my motion because I'm okay with part of what you guys want to do, and I think staff indicated they may be too. So I move that Preservation Board allow the garage driveway to be infilled, and work with staff to get the masonry right in that infill there.
We do have an architectural plan for blocking up that wall as well.
Okay, but deny the proposed removal of the chimney and the alteration of the front stoop.
Is there a second to that motion?
On the alteration of the front stoop, can we just, I'm sorry.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Mike, what do you want to do?
Oh, well, you know, I'm very familiar with this house, and and we deal with these all the time, so I don't think it's a problem to infill that driveway in that neighborhood. I don't know of another one like that in that neighborhood. Away goes the curb cut, which we don't like on city streets. I think there's an alley behind that house.
There is.
Yeah. So, but because I pass that building all the time, you know, I do think that chimney, on an otherwise, you know, sort of, I guess, unremarkable house, that chimney is a nice feature, and it would be missed. And I agree with staff that the stoop style should remain the same, as the original house. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, is there a mention of the retaining wall in your motion?
Yeah, including the retaining wall removal.
Okay.
It's fine.
Roofs of the retaining wall?
Yeah, that
Okay,
can go
I just
to
wanna get that
the
right.
sunken driveway and retaining wall.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think I agree with Mike. I mean, you made a very, reasonable.
Discussion with us.
I'm sorry. Well, I think the argument was made. I mean, it's valid. Some of the challenges they're encountering. I do think, though, that the chimney happens to be a defining characteristic of the house, and I would rather see I'd rather see the chimney retained and the hole filled in with something else. Also, there's no guarantee that the bricks on the chimney will not be damaged in the deconstruction process. So I'm going to agree with Mike on his motion. I totally do away with the curb cut. Great. The stoop I don't have much of an opinion on, to be honest with you, but the chimney I do think needs to remain.
And on this end?
I'm fine with the garage. The stoop, I'm fine with. The chimney, I'm just wondering, I don't want it to look out of place in terms of when they're talking about matching. I guess that's my one concern. I understand keeping the integrity.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the one area.
I wonder if they could take some bricks out from behind all these shutters. And put the bricks you wouldn't see behind there. That's a good place to take them.
Interesting, but taking down a defining feature, just to get its brick, maybe, doesn't seem to be a good idea. Maybe they have to figure out how to find new brick or look around more for matching old brick.
Right.
Alderman?
Yeah, he testified that he had not had that much conversations with the staff.
Yeah.
So.
He will
why
now.
not just? He will not, okay. Well, if the motion passed. I just don't see why not just defer it and then let him have a conversation and bring back something that could be unified.
If this fails, I suspect that will be the next motion.
Well, and Mr. Alderman, the reason I went forward with this was to let them know that perhaps if this passes, the board at least is okay on that one major issue of the driveway, and they could work out the other items with staff.
I don't recall any houses on that street having a tuck under like that, so.
Right. So filling it in,
Is not an issue, okay.
although it'd be a cool little pool. A side pool.
Apparently it's a mosquito bed.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Or a mosquito, yep. Any further discussion? Okay, Commissioners, there's a motion on the floor to review. It offers our preliminary approval on the retaining wall and garage and withholds it on the chimney and the stoop. Is that correct? Okay. That is our motion. Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Kennedy, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes?
Okay, that is 3 yeses, 1 no. The motion carries. You should probably talk to staff soon.
Just to be clear, did you say yes to the garage and just no to the other 2 items? Is that where we're at? No
Garage
to
and
the
retaining
chimney.
wall.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
I mean, you'll still need permits and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Had to make sure. Okay, Commissioners, we have agenda item C, 1819 Lynch. Thank you. Agenda item.
Oh, yeah, well, these didn't get
Okay.
Yeah.
It's either B or C, but it's 1819 Lynch.
See if Jan
I feel like every month there's a
And here it is.
I think so.
I finally
think I
figured out
hear
how to advance this. Okay, I'm Jan Cameron from the Cultural Resources Office. This is a new application to make some alterations to the Lemp Street side of this building at 1819 Lynch, located in the Benton Park Historic District. And there it is. On May 17th, the staff received a complaint that doors were being inappropriately altered at this address. On inspection, we saw what you see here in the upper frame, that 2 double doors had been infilled with very large windows. And an existing garage door, which of course was a later addition to the facade, had been turned into a new entrance with a center door and side lights, and I have a better photo of that coming up. So that's what's been changed for the 2 bays, 2 northernmost bays. They're identical, exactly, and this is the new garage door, well, the location of the garage door. So none of these alterations comply with the Benton Park Historic District standards, which require that when elements are replaced, that they be replaced appropriately using a historic example. The property owner was cited. When he contacted us, he said that he had a permit for these alterations. In fact, upon investigation, he had a permit for interior alterations to the building, which, as you know, is not referred to the Cultural Resources Office, since we have jurisdiction only over the exterior. So he applied for a new application for the work that you see tonight, and asking that it be approved by the board in variance from the standards. And staff, of course, is recommending that it be denied, and that we ask for appropriate doors to be replaced in these openings. Question? A little bit of context. This is the building from the front. And this is the context along Lynch. The shot of the building. And this is the context opposite along Lemp.
Interesting.
May I ask a question?
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
Did you finish?
I finished.
Did I miss some cue? I'm so sorry, Jan.
I was just curious, is the
Questions
work...
on this side?
Thank you.
Randy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the work complete, the replacement?
I
Or because
believe
it
it is
seemed a
complete.
little, the wood paneling around that door looked
Well,
a little...
I guess you could talk to the owner more about that,
Okay.
but the important stuff is completed, yes.
Thank you.
Questions on this side? Okay. You sure you're done?
I think so.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Gary Wood. Make a loud noise when you finish talking.
After I'm done?
I am live tweeting this meeting.
Sure. Gary Wood, Stryker Construction. This is Josh Turner with Link Selling. He's the tenant. Thanks for hearing us today. Basically, you guys see what had happened here. But what I would say is we went through the whole building permit process, and she says it's interior. Could have been tenant finish. It was clearly marked on the drawing, so imagine going through the process and being a certain amount of percentage complete. You know, you got $15,000 worth of stuff sitting out there, and then all of a sudden somebody's saying that you didn't install it correctly. We understand. We can obviously look at what you're saying and see, but you know, now we're stuck in this point where we have stuff out there. There's a few things that we could obviously do to the windows to give it back to the historic. But what I'll tell you is that garage door specifically has an ADA entrance to it. So it's about a $9,000 garage door. And that's how we're actually gaining access into the space. To change that around would actually take some, pretty significant modifications. You can look at the garage door that was there previously. It's pretty big improvement compared to what was there. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of what we're, why we're here today. So we're just looking to see if basically there's a way that we could appease on certain things and see if maybe the garage door we can somehow come to a compromise on.
Have you got your permit application, a copy with you?
I can check and see.
Okay.
We definitely have a permit. I went through several inspections. Inspectors said absolutely nothing to us.
The
So,
permit, actually the permit plans.
Yes.
Pass that down to Adana and she'll give them to us, please.
I think it's just a set. Yeah, I'll have to show you the notes.
What do you want me to do with it?
Nope, I just want you to see that he showed it to us.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, you can show it back to them.
Okay.
Could I ask Jan to clarify something for me? I'm the owner of the building who had those conversations that she mentioned.
Well, let's take a look at these plan
Okay.
things first. But you will be able to ask her that question.
All right, I'll wait my turn.
Right here.
Yeah, I don't have the approved set. We're supposed to stay on site. Let's see. Dates. This one. No 4. There's the door to the exterior.
You were the plan examiner, what would you have seen? Jan? You were the plan examiner, what would you have seen?
I was not able to get a copy of the plans from the building division. Yeah, it should have been transmitted to us, and it was not.
Oh, yeah.
Insufficient evidence, it's not marked as approved.
Right.
That has the building inspector stamp on it?
They're not.
There's no approved stamp on it.
Oh, well then.
They wouldn't give us, so we're supposed to have our approved stamp on site. I mean, I could have swagged it and brought it over here if you guys really want. It's not like there's anything different from what we've submitted to these guys. Honestly, I have a building permit number. I wouldn't sit here and lie about what's on the drawings.
Unfortunately, if we don't have the plans with the stamp from the building division signed and dated, it means nothing. I mean, you could have had those plans. I'm not saying you're not right. I'm just saying that there's nothing legal about them.
Yeah.
Because he's saying,
You understand though, we're
he's saying
supposed to
it
have
has
them on
to
site.
be on site.
But
Okay, let's resolve it this way. Is it your testimony that these plans are identical to the ones that are on site and approved? Okay, we'll weigh that however we choose to weigh that. Okay, is there anything else you guys like to add?
Josh, is there anything else you want to add to it?
Well, the thing I wanted to clarify kind of just got discussed, that I thought that when I had talked to Jan about it, that at one point on the phone that she had said that the plans were sent to your office.
I never said that, sir.
So I guess we're not on the same page about that. So I just wanted to say that, from our standpoint, obviously I appreciate the time Jan spent with me on the phone. She was really generous in walking me through how this process works. I wish that we would have known about it ahead of time, because we would have loved to have done things that would have made you guys happy. But now we're at a place where we got a permit approved based off of those drawings, and nobody said to us, you need to go through this additional process to get these things approved, and we had no clue, or we would have done it. And now it's a significant amount of cost that we've incurred. I mean, we're a small business. It would put us under some duress to have to replace all of these. And replacing all of them, the overhead door is it's not a man door with side lights. It's a complete overhead door with an ADA door built into it. So the whole thing rolls up. And it was very expensive to do that, and we did it to make the space ADA compliant. And that includes a lot of stuff that is going on the inside with concrete ramps, et cetera. So, you know, to replace all of it would be a real obstacle financially for our business, because it would be more than just replacing a few doors. It would be replacing one overhead door, the two windows, as well as potentially a lot of interior work related to the ADA issue. I don't know how that would all pan out. The other thing I would say is that those two doors that were replaced were not operational. So if you were to look at the interior of the building, those two doors, if you had a way to open them, they were secured shut. It went into a warehouse that was unfinished, and there was about a 2-foot step down. So they were not in operation. They were just totally fixed, and they just kind of looked like doors like that. I don't know if that matters or not, but I thought I would mention it. And I would just finally say that, you know, as Gary mentioned, we're definitely open to finding a solution to possibly with the windows somehow finding a way to trim them out so that it would be acceptable to you. I think the overhead door is going to be a real issue to do something like that with. Just I don't know how we would possibly do it. So I just wanted to mention that. And I've talked with Jan a number of times and looking forward to working with them more to find a good resolution on this. And I think the reason we came here today without some new resolution was at the recommendation of Jan that we needed to get this somehow application submitted to prevent a court case being filed or something like that, which obviously we're not interested in anything like that. So I appreciate all your time. Any questions for me?
Well, one suggestion, if the vote doesn't go your way, this garage door thing, you put it back deep enough that I could see, you know, perhaps a set of doors, accordion doors that are historic looking going in front of it that could be opened up so the door doesn't have to go away. It could stay. It's just concealed behind historic looking doors. And then the windows, I don't know how we add trim to those. I think that might just be something you got to eat, but I can understand $9,000 on the garage door. I've actually seen that. I think the Bicycle Works down in Soulard has a solution like that where they have the historic doors, but there's something like your door behind it.
Okay.
So it might not all be lost. That's a thought. If the vote doesn't go your way.
Questions on this side?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you
How
can.
do I go about not having, you know what I mean? How do I go about not having this issue in the future? Obviously, I know now, but I just feel for other people that might go through the same process. And then
I would say if you're building in a local historic district in the city of St. Louis, you start with the Cultural Resources Office and say, hey, Jan, here's what we're thinking about.
Building anywhere.
But I guess my question would be though, shouldn't there be some trigger in the building division side?
Yeah.
You know, I'd hate to get somebody else get this far along. It's just really disappointing to go through this whole process and then end up where we are today. Because we both feel kind of, you know, I understand where you guys are coming from, but there's also this side here. It's really not fair at this point. You know?
Well, based
And I'm just making a comment.
based upon the testimony heard, the circumstance is relatively rare. And I don't know how to fix relatively rare. I can fix happens a lot, but relatively rare is a tough one. And we'll think about that as we carve up this baby.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Sharon, could I make one statement?
Yes, ma'am.
As I said, I was not able to get a copy of the plans because they were with the inspector. But the permit itself says interior only. So whether those doors appear on the plans or not, I don't know how relevant that is, since it was an interior only permit that was issued.
It sounds like
I could comment on that too.
There's $9,000 sitting on the table.
Only, I mean, if I would have been down there to market, I'd probably put tenant finish. So we can't always say who's putting it in and who was actually applying for it. What went down at that point? They could have put in interior, it could have been tenant finish. Tenant finish to me could have been windows on the outside, etc. So basically, I feel like it's something the plan reviewer has to look at when he goes through the drawings, right?
It's just really difficult for me to feel like, you know, like Gary said, of like just, how are we held accountable for this? But that said, I am willing to find a compromise and spend a little bit more of my money to make everybody feel like they got a fair shake.
And if I might add, the reason these rules were put into place was that a lot of what the neighbors called down there abominations were getting built. You know, there was over by Blue City Deli, a third store addition was put on that looked like a shoebox on top of the building. Some new houses went in that were inappropriate for the surrounding neighborhood. So the rules were there. I mean, one of the reasons you may have been drawn to our neighborhood or that neighborhood is the nice architecture, the historic nature of it all. And little things like this start to change it.
I appreciate that.
So that's why.
Okay, commissioners, this concludes testimony on this matter. All things Benton Park for us, for good and for evil.
Yes, sir. Blade sign. You have a long memory. Move that the Preservation Board denied the application as the installed doors and windows do not comply with the Benton Park Historic District standards, and that the applicant work with staff for a solution.
Is there a second? Is there a second for discussion?
I would discuss.
Yeah.
Okay.
For discussion.
For discussion. Hang on a second. So, what's the thought?
Well, you know, I expressed it there.
You did.
I'm actually a resident and a business owner down there. We're all held to these standards, and we put these standards in place so Benton Park would continue its unique historic look. So it truly does change things when details like this are allowed to be altered. We wrote these standards. It's an ordinance that was accepted by the Board of Aldermen. So for us to ignore these standards in this meeting, I don't think it's appropriate, especially on such a prominent corner. This is at the corner of Lemp and Lynch Street. A lot of folks go past here. It's it'd be one thing if it was tucked around the corner on the other side, but this, everybody sees this. It's a big, shiny, new thing in a very old district. It's just, it doesn't.
I agree. I completely agree with what you're saying, because I look at this and I'm like, oh gosh, this does not match the neighborhood. My dilemma is the gray area of the approval. I would hate to put them on the hook for something if they have stamped plans. I just don't see how we can hold them as much as I mean, it's nice and shiny, but I hate it because it doesn't really match the neighborhood. So I just feel, I don't know how we can hold them accountable based on something that was approved, but then Jan states that it says exterior or interior only. So it feels like a very, very gray area to me.
Which is sort of why I like the motion, because it will send them back to a place where they should be right now, which is figuring out how to make what they're doing comply with the district standards as closely as possible.
Like the door cover up, I like
you've
that.
seen that, the
I think that's
bicycle
a really,
works.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
a really
it's
good idea. So I'd hate for them.
Keep it open on a nice day.
Yeah. Because most people, I think, would say, take the windows out and do it properly, but because they kind of try to do it properly, I know kind of try is maybe not good enough, but at the same time, I don't want them to pull out $9,000 based upon a huge oversight potentially, so.
Well, after they talk to staff, I suspect we will see a new application again. And I bet you it will be in closer conformance to Plus, the tenor of this discussion directs staff to try to work towards a solution. And staff is usually very good about that.
Okay.
Is there further discussion?
Well, I would just say, if we were to say, oh my gosh, the permit office made a mistake, so, you know, there's one wrong, do we make another wrong by going against the district standards to make up for what the permit office did?
That's why it's,
You know, it's not, you know, the rule, I guess the ordinance isn't enforce this unless the permit office misses something, it's enforce it. And, you know, I just feel it's pretty clear on this one.
I mean,
Excuse me, can I
No.
make it? Oh, no public comment? No.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's what I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in agreement about it's unfortunate that this occurred. I do sympathize with the ambiguity of that approval. That's a position nobody wants to be in, and I don't see any downside with going back to staff and retooling this to see if there is some kind of a positive compromise that can be reached that would not put them out more than necessary, but also that appeases the historic district standards with a nod to the fact that there was some kind of miscommunication or misapproval somewhere along the line.
Well, you know, it sounds like the garage door is the biggest piece of it, and there might be a solution to that. So, okay, commissioners, that concludes our discussion on this subject. I'm going to look for my roll sheet again. There it is. There's a motion on the floor. It's been made and seconded, albeit for discussion, but it's properly before us. I hear you, Alderman. I'm not going to look at you. Commissioner Colleen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Alderman Kennedy, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
yes.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
That's 4 yeses. The motion is approved. Thank you. Okay, commissioners, we are going to reconvene as a board to hear appeals of denials. And we have 5 commissioners present. That constitutes a quorum. And the first appeal of a denial is a really interesting one. It says right there, appeal of denial.
I asked the same thing.
It says they can't approve it without us looking at it, so that's what it is. 1 Theater Drive.
Okay, after the chairman has said that, I will say that this is what is known in the business as a soft denial. It is called an administrative denial because we have a limited time to review a permit by ordinance before we lose jurisdiction. So that's the reason it's been denied.
I am very familiar with soft denials. When asked about the dishwasher, that's what I say.
So, having said that, the staff is recommending approval of this. Our jurisdiction, as you all know, is Ordinance 64689, which requires the Preservation Board to review any alterations to publicly owned leased structures, such as the Muni. And I'm not going to say very much because I'm going to let the Muni representatives take that over. But essentially, there are changes, going to be changes, major changes to the stage, orchestra pit, and somewhat to the grounds around it as well. So
I want you to
this
say
is-
catwalk.
And the catwalk. And so these are the existing wings of the stage, which will have the most noticeable changes. And I probably even should show you these, but these are the renderings that we were provided with. And I think that's all I'm going to say, other than that we recommend that the board approve, return our soft denial and approve the project.
Do you want us to overturn it softly, or would
Whatever.
would you like a definitive overturn?
Definitive overturn, yes.
Okay, well, we'll see. Sean Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for hearing us.
By the way, you may arrange your presentation. You've brought lots of people. You may arrange your presentation any way you want.
Oh, thank you. We've got a few slides that we want to show too. I want to also point out that we do have Muni President and CEO Dennis Reagan, our Chairman of the Board Steve Jones, and also past Chairman Clark Davis here in support. Thank you for allowing us to present today. I'd also like to thank Dan Krasnoff and Jan Cameron because they've really been very helpful in guiding us through this process. This isn't something we do every day. We're at a very exciting time in our history. We are currently in our 100th season in Forest Park, no small feat for any organization, let alone one that produces musical theater. Certainly we're taking a lot of time to celebrate the history, but we're also taking a step back to look at the future and what we need to do to be viable as an institution for the next century. As part of our discussion, we started to talk about some of the needs for the facility, infrastructure. For the last 20 years, almost all of our improvements have been focused on patron amenities, seats, concession stands, welcoming plazas, and even expanding our restroom facilities. The one area that, or many areas that have not been looked at in any great detail is what goes on behind the scenes. We have a very old infrastructure there that we've been working with. We've been identified several needs and been working with several theater consultants to help us figure out ways to produce shows of today versus how the theater was built over the last 100 years. Next slide there. So the first project we want to talk about of these many that we've identified is what we're here to discuss today. It's a complete reconstruction of our main stage, the orchestra pit, the stage towers, and the light bridge, all what you see in the photo there. The work is interior to our facility, but is the one improvement project on all of our lists that the public will see as they come out to see our shows. Next. This is a photo of the turntable when it was first installed in 1930. Certainly we've replaced components of it over the years, but we've, including automation, but the turntable is still in its current configuration. We also have the pylons, or the stage towers there on the right. Here you can see from 1935 what the original tower looked like there with the catenary up above, or the catwalk as they say. It was put in to house our lights and speakers. And then today what it looks like with the next photo is, this is in 2018. So certainly over the years the look has changed. There were several improvements made in the late 50s and early 60s where the walls were raised to hide some of the theatrical equipment behind there. If you've been out to one of our shows, the scenery booms or the stage curtains that open or close, it hides all that mechanism as well as a blower system that provides air for our patrons. You can also see some of the original architecture is still there, but most of it's been hidden through patchwork and paint over the years. Next slide. This is what's not so obvious to the visitors when they come out. They come out and enjoy a performance. They don't really look around. We're really good, because we do things on stage, we're really good at hiding things. But the reality is that we've got a failing infrastructure behind the scenes and there on stage. We spend a considerable amount of time and money every year in efforts to maintain the very old structures. And now we've reached a point where we're literally patching patches. We do structural repairs to our stage every year. Our wood floor, which is the turntable, it gets replaced every 2 to 3 years. The steel structure underneath is every 6 to 7. What you see in the photo there with one of our stage towers, you see the plaster facade, how it's deteriorating. We have a lot of moisture issues because of that we're patching every year. We have millions of dollars of theatrical equipment inside those buildings, sound systems, electric and lighting systems, that we're constantly patching that to try and keep that equipment safe. We have an antiquated light bridge. While we inspect it every year for safety, we're sort of maxed out on what we can do in terms of lighting equipment and speakers, excuse me. And then while not necessarily a repair concern, our orchestra pit is really nothing more than a hole in the ground with very little ventilation. Not exactly the ideal work situation for people who are sort of instrumental to musical theater. So what we're here, as we started to look at these improvements and get a handle on what we needed, we also realized how important it was. We want to make these changes. We don't want to change the Muni. We've got subscribers that have come out for years and years. We want a fresh look, but we don't want to take away from their Muni because we don't want public backlash. So with that, we did 2 years ago a search for architects across the country. We were looking for someone who could take on the theater and performing arts concept. Also, the fact that we're outdoors adds a little unique flavor to what we do. And then also the historic, trying to come up with something new and fresh, but again, when people come out, that they don't feel like we've taken that away from them. So we've teamed up with H3. It's a architect firm out of New York. I've asked Ariel Fausto from their firm to actually speak today and talk a little about the design.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I can only say it's been a real honor to be able to work with Sean and Danny and the entire Muni organization on a project like this, which is one of those projects that I think belongs to everybody because it's a place about community. My name is Ariel Fausto. I'm one of the principals at H3. We're a firm
I
from...
know that Sean told me that you'd be singing this presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. He's hired for me for a lot of things. I guarantee you it's not for my singing voice. But we are a firm in New York that specializes in arts, culture, and public space, in cultural facilities, historic facilities. Our projects include the renovation of Radio City Music Hall, all of the renovation and the work at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, at Lincoln Center Theater, at the Denver Performing Arts Complex. So we have a vested interest in the nature of public buildings as cultural resources, but also, I think more importantly, how these places bring community together. And very early on, we started work in 2016, and my first couple of visits here, I think quickly showed me how extraordinary of a place the Muni is. I really think it's someplace that all of St. Louis, I can only imagine, is incredibly proud of because it is wholly unique. That idea of an experience of theater with the landscape in a place like this where you're outdoors, to intimately get together 11,000 people around Mamma Mia is kind of extraordinary, and certainly they should be congratulated. So, when we started work on this, it was clear what the scope was. As Sean described, the side buildings, which essentially form the proscenium of the theater, the light bridge to allow them to do more complicated productions, and the stage work and the orchestra pit. That's the scope, but what the spirit of the project really is about renewal while connecting to history, while connecting to this unique place. And I think most importantly, being able to allow the organization to move forward into that next 100 years. While those buildings, and I think it's important when you see those buildings, nobody notices them. They do extraordinary work, and they have made it do extraordinary work, but what I think most people in the theater describe their work as is sort of creating magic out of duct tape, right? I mean, they really are piecing it together, and now is this moment where they're able to look at this next 100 years in a way that can be operationally sustainable for them, and to be able to do work, produce essentially world-class theater for the community of St. Louis for the next 100 years. I have no songs.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Okay. Jen, anything to add? Alderman Kennedy, questions?
No questions.
Okay, you want to make the motion?
I would move that the Preservation Board approve the proposed renovation of the Muni Stage, Wings, Orchestra Pit, and grounds.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Commissioners, I'll call a roll.
We need to deny.
Right. This is, for purposes of clarification, we are overturning the soft denial.
Right.
Is that clear? So this will be a yes vote to overturn the soft denial, a no vote to uphold the soft denial. Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Kennedy, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
That's 4 yeses. The soft denial is strongly overturned. Go do a show. Okay, commissioners. Next up, 4617 Maryland.
Right. This is 4617 Maryland Avenue. I'm Andrea Gagan, Cultural Resources Office, and I swear to tell the truth. I need to enter into the record ordinance 64689 as amended by 64925, enabling ordinance, and 56768 as amended by 69423, which is the Central West End Historic District ordinance, as well as the PowerPoint in the agenda. This is 4617 Maryland Avenue. Middle of the block. This is the proposal. The applicant applied for a building permit to construct a 2-tier brick retaining wall in front of the building. The Central West End Historic District standards do not allow the installation of new retaining walls, so the application was denied and the owners have appealed. You see, there are existing stair walls right here at these 2 locations with up here on each side. They are applying to extend new walls along the sidewalk and then up the side and across on a second tier higher up on the side of the sidewalk. This is a cross-section of the proposed wall. They would be a little over 2 feet tall with a brick cap top. This is a view from across, kind of hard to see with all the cars, but this is a current view of the front yard. As you can see, there are bushes down on the lower level and some plantings higher up on the top. So some close-up views of both sides of the slope.
But you can't add to it till it ends.
This is just a close-up of the existing stair walls. This is also a view of the front slopes to either side of 4617 Maryland. As you can see, to the west, it's pretty much existing slope is still there. There have been some alterations to the slope on a couple houses next to them. Both, I believe, were built without permits, and I couldn't tell you when that happened. But it wasn't too recently, I don't think. Basically, the proposal, the original terrace would be interrupted by the installation of the new walls in opposition to the Central West End Historic District standards, which are very clear on installing walls where they have not previously existed. Even where they previously existed, it's recommended that they be removed and the slope returned. The proposed walls are over 2 feet in height with brick veneer and brick cap, and it will be highly visible and not historically appropriate for the front slope of the yard. The Cultural Resources Office recommends the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the application as it did not comply with the Central West End Historic District standards.
Questions on this side? Questions on this side?
So it's just an application at this point, there's not a wall there?
No, there's no wall there now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's hear from the appellant. Mosby Building Arts?
Yes.
Okay, it's you. Tell us your
Okay.
name,
My name is Rich Orris.
your
I'm
address,
excuse me?
your address.
The business address
That
is
we could find you again if we looked for you.
645 Leffingwell Avenue
Great.
in
Is your-
Kirkwood, Missouri.
Will your testimony be the truth?
Absolutely.
Okay, proceed.
Okay. I do have some photos of different addresses up and down their street. And a couple of them are actually identical to what we are proposing to build. Could I approach and maybe have you look at those?
Give those down to Adonis so she can mark them as evidence.
And I've highlighted 3 of the addresses that actually are the ones that have the same pretty much identical retaining wall that we're looking to build that have been there for quite some time. One of which is right at the beginning of the street. It's a storefront, but it's the World Chess Hall of Fame storefront that has the exact same looking box retaining wall with plants in it. And then 4527 right up the road and 4506 right up the road both have brick retaining walls that are identical pretty much to what we're going to build in height and the way they look and everything. But on the entire list, on their street, there's like 10 or 11 retaining walls, which is approximately 30% of the houses on the road. And as I go 3 more streets over, I find an additional 20 retaining walls, all up and down the streets all around there. So the owner is quite upset that, all this is around and he can see it from his front porch. He can see his neighbors every time he walks out his house. They get to have the same thing that we actually did our homework, found out we were in a, historic area, applied, did everything correctly in order to be denied on something that he sees on 30% of his street. So it's kind of a big question for him. And he chose not to come here tonight because he's so upset about it that he didn't want to even try and speak or anything. And the reasoning behind why they would like this retaining wall is they're very close to all the stores and restaurants and things, right down the street at the end of their street. And the patrons that park on their street put litter in the bushes. They've fallen into the bushes. They're destroying his landscape. He has holes through those bushes where those bushes are starting to die from the inside and actually have spots missing. So in an attempt to prevent that, we're thinking that the retaining wall would keep people from actually going into it and hitting that and everything. And with what's around it, we feel that it will look and comply quite well with everything around it and matching the house and the existing conditions around it.
Questions on this side?
No, sir.
Questions on this side? Is there anything else you'd like to submit into evidence?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Siebert, it's your turn.
My name is William Seibert. I live at 54 Waterman Place, and I will tell the truth.
Thank you. I bet we've heard this presentation before, sir.
Well, somewhat. Okay, there's a little addition. I've got some information which you have asked about before, and I wanted to provide that
Excellent.
at this
Thank you.
point. The Central West End Historic District standards stipulate, I think as Andrea indicated, opaque fences or walls are permitted only along alleys or along the side and or rear yard of the primary structure. Original or historic earth terraces shall be preserved and shall not be altered or interrupted by the introduction of retaining walls. The proposal to erect a retaining wall containing planter boxes along the front property line at the sidewalk at 4617 Maryland Avenue violates the above provisions of the Historic District standards. The Cultural Resources Office denial of a permit to erect such a wall must be upheld if the district standards are to be respected. The Preservation Board has recently upheld the Crow's denial of applications to build non-compliant walls at the following properties in the district: 4530 McPherson Avenue, 4537 McPherson Avenue, 4718 McPherson Avenue, 4550 Pershing Place, 5052 Westminster Place, 5244 Westminster Place. We respectfully request that the Preservation Board act consistently in its determination to honor the provisions of the Central West End Historic District standards, and that it uphold the denial of this current application. For your information in considering this matter, recent examples of owners of properties within the historic district who have voluntarily taken action to comply with the provisions of the standards cited above by removing non-compliant retaining walls built prior to the establishment of the district and restoring historic terraces may be seen at 24 Portland Place, 4545 McPherson Avenue, 4624 McPherson Avenue. On other occasions, our committee, that is the Central West End Planning and Development Committee, has worked productively with property owners in the district who were undertaking projects by explaining the significance of the earth terraces as a defining characteristic of the West End's historic streetscapes, and the inappropriateness and prohibition of intrusive front retaining walls. As a result of this collaboration with the Neighborhood Committee, these projects have incorporated preservation of the terraces at their properties. Excellent examples of this respect for the historic streetscape can be seen at the high-rise condominium building at 4545 Lindell. And I have pictures of this. These are the ones where that is on Portland Place, where they, on their own, off their own bat, removed a brick retaining wall that went all the way in front of the property. Here we go, 45. Sorry, this is at 45. Hold on. 45 McPherson, where a retaining wall was removed and the terrace was restored. That's the same site. This is at 4624 McPherson, where the owners removed a retaining wall that had been built prior to the introduction of the standards. These collaborations, here's the one I just referred to, 4545 Lindell Boulevard. We worked with the developer and pointed out the terrace that goes all along that block of Lindell, and they altered their design to include an earth terrace there. Another example is at 21 through 59 Maryland Place, where a historic earth terrace was retained, but quite a steep one, in front of the 7 buildings, the 7 townhouses along that block. And carry on, Andrew. Yes, at the northeast corner of Maryland and Newstead. Beautiful single-family house at the northeast corner across from the new cathedral, where the owners, who were contemplating building brick retaining wall on that corner, we talked with them about the importance of retaining the earth terraces and the beauty of them, and they agreed and have maintained the historic terraces there. In closing, our committee asks that you support the enforcement of the important provisions of our historic district standards previously cited and uphold the staff's denial of this application. Sincerely, Central West End Planning and Development Committee. Thank you.
That was an impressive presentation.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's very detailed.
Commissioners, that concludes the testimony in this matter. Commissioner Hamilton, you want to make this motion?
The motions that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial of the retaining walls do not comply with the Central West End Historic District standards.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? The appellant's testimony was that his owner wanted to be treated like we treated other people. I think we can probably do that.
Yeah, those were either grandfathered in, the other examples of the retaining walls, or?
We heard from where we
sorry.
recently have
Right.
dealt with retaining walls.
Right.
Okay, commissioners, a vote. Let me find my roll sheet. Alderman Kennedy, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Killeen, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Vines, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
That is 4 yeses. The appeal is denied. Commissioners, that concludes the business on our agenda. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Okay, then without hearing any objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Jan. Congratulations.